Hi, I'm Kat, and today we're going to walk through how to make one of the vinyl window masks. These masks allow other people to see your expression and to lip read. So thank you so much for volunteering to make them for KRISA. We all really appreciate your generosity of your time. So thank you so much. And here we go. You are going to need a sewing machine with thread. You could also use a serger for parts of it. Scissors, pins, then you need vinyl. The vinyl should be at least 8 gauge. I'm using 16 gauge. I wouldn't go any thicker than 20, it's just harder to sew through. But any less than 8 and it doesn't hold up in the wash very well. Elmer's glue has been a huge time saver for me. It's not necessary, but it does make things go faster. You need the pattern cut out. 2 pieces of bias tape. They are 40 inches long a piece, and then not necessary, but again, time saver for me is an iron. So I'm going to start by taking my pre-cut pieces here, and I did these, but a huge thank you to the laser cutters that cut out all of the fabric for us. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. The 2 pieces, we're going to want to put right sides together. You can also do this with right side next to wrong side. Put one right on top of the other. Critical thing here is to make sure that your window panes line up on both of them. The rest you've got room for sewing and binding, but if the window pane doesn't line up, that's going to be a huge problem. So from here, you can pin it in place. Usually just do a couple quick pins, or when I get going I don't even bother to pin it anymore. And then we're going to stitch along these outside edges, about 1/4 inch in, just straight down both sides. I like using my serger because it will wrap the edges at the same time, but using regular sewing machine is great also. You can take the pins out, and I've got my serged edges here. Again, straight stitch is fine, and my window pieces are lined up. The wrong side of the fabric is out, right side or the printed side is together. If you are using a piece of flesh-toned material and then something with a print on it, so at this point it doesn't matter as long as you have the fabric right sides together. So I'm using the glue stick method, which made it go a lot faster for me. If you don't have a glue stick on hand, you can still do these. What you would want to do is take the fabric, and you've got these nice slits cut at 45-degree angles into the corners. Fold the fabric back and then iron. So the wrong side is towards you, the printed side is down. Folding those and then iron, and then you can straight stitch all along the edges. And that was a little bit more time consuming for me, but it absolutely works. So with your glue stick, we're going to glue right along all of the edges. Doesn't take too much, just a thin strip around the edges. And then we're going to peel that one layer off and fold it back, press down, and it should stick. To help it stay down, because you can see it's a little bubbly, I like hitting it with a warm iron for a couple seconds. So it's nice and smooth. We're going to do this exact same thing on the other side. When I'm doing this side and I'm pulling the fabric back, I'm going to make sure that I line up the fabric with the other side. So those edges should be flush with one another. And with the fabric already cut for you, it should be about 1/4 inch on each of these flaps. Our next step is to take our 2 pieces of fabric and fold them right side out. So you've got the window panes here. We're going to line those up. And again, optional step would be to iron this edge I like doing that, but you can just sort of go for it without if you want. So my window panes line up really nicely. Our next step is pinning the clear vinyl in place. So I've got my piece of vinyl here. It's 3 by 5, and between the two pieces of fabric, I'm going to try as best I can to get it to go in about that spot here. So I've got, an inch or so on each side, left and right, and then 1/2 inch top and bottom. And then I like pinning as far to the edge as possible so that my sewing machine can go in between the pin and the edge of the window. So sort of peel up on it, try and line it up as best I can. Set it down and then pin. So I sort of pick it up and pinch the vinyl in place so hopefully it doesn't slide. And then I'm pinning just on that edge. And typically I would pin things perpendicular to the edge so the needle goes over it. But with this, I'm worried that the needle might poke into the vinyl window, which would be against the whole purpose of this thing. So with it pinned this way, I've got enough room for my sewing machine's foot to stitch in here and not hit the pins. We're going to stitch around the edge of the window. I know that I've got about a 1/4 inch overlap, and really we're trying to go through that overlap, the vinyl, and then the second overlap. So if we stay within about 1/8 of an inch to the edge of the window, as long as everything is lined up, we should be good to go. I'll start it with a lock stitch and then go all the way around, ending with another lock stitch. So the next part is making these darts that are on the pattern. So we'll take our fabric, fold it in half with the inside of the mask outside here, and this is the outside of the mask on the inside. Not at all confusing. So we'll fold that in half, and we're going to stitch along these two darts that we have here. So at this point you have to make a decision on the front and the back. The top is most definitely the pointy end up here. But if one side looks nicer than another, I would make that the outside. So what I was thinking was originally going to be the inside, I think looks a little bit better. So this is now the outside of my mask. So if I want that to be the outside, I'm going to fold the mask in half, carefully not creasing the vinyl, just folding it in half, trying to line up my edges. I'm going to put a quick pin in there to hold it in place. And then we're going to be making some darts. So they're shown on the pattern. We're going to come in from that top corner, just go a little bit on a diagonal here. And then same thing on our bottom corner. Come in with a dart here. So with this extra corner piece that we have, we want to trim that off, giving about a 1/4 inch space between the stitching and the outside. I like using my pinking shears, but if you need to regular cut it, you can use regular scissors too. So your mask should look something like this at this point, knowing that this is going to be on the inside towards the person's face. So I flip that and sort of push out the darts so you can see how it's shaped over a person's face. The next part is putting the pleats in, and I hate pleating. It's one of the hardest things for me, so here we go. Okay, so making the pleats, I've got the top and bottom of my mask here. With the top part on the outside, I want to make sure that the pleats fold down so that when someone is wearing this, you don't get things stuck in it due to gravity. So less likely to get stuck if it's shaped down that way. And again, pleating, not my favorite thing at all. You could do 2 or 3 pleats. I tend to do 2 just because I am not as competent as I would like to be in pleating. So they usually wind up looking something like that. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side, making sure that they're going the same direction. So still pointing down on the front of the mask. Trying to get the size as close to the first set as possible. So then to see how close they are, you can hold up the edges. And I'm gonna toot my own horn on this one because that's pretty good for me. So my pleats line up, they're headed downward across the face. So now we'll do a stitch along each of the edges here. If you're doing a straight stitch, I recommend 2. You can also do a zigzag, a tight zigzag stitch, so that there's a little bit of give within it. So I'm set for my zigzag stitch. My foot is along the edge here. And we'll start with the lock stitch and then keep going. So I've got my zigzag stitch on both of the edges. So at this point, your mask should look something like this with your outside and your inside. And next we want to wrap the edge here in bias tape, and it'll be long enough that those are the straps that a person will tie around their head. So grab your bias tape. And I tend to fold it in half, so I know where the middle is, sort of hold there with my thumb. And then open it up right at that point, because that middle point is going to go on your dart seam. So I'm going to place it inside here about halfway and then wrap over. So that's my center point. And then putting a pin there. And then from here we want to wrap the rest of the top edge. So holding it out, again lining it up with the center seam, and that should let you fold the bias tape, whoops, right over top. So depending on how sort of bumpy it is, you might want to do 2 pins. I usually pin the edge next, and then one in the center point there. And then same exact thing on the other side. So we'll take this and stitch along the open seam all the way down on one side and one complete straight stitch. So sewing the bias tape as the ties, I'm going to have my mask with the pins towards me and sort of thread that along to make sure I don't have it twisted at all. And switching to a straight stitch, I'm going to stitch along this open edge here. So stitching along that all the way down. Same thing, other side. And of course my thread breaks. So we can take our pins out and then trim up any loose edges that you've got. So along the edge of the bias tape I still have some there. There you go. Completed window mask. You could do an optional extra piece for a nose wire if you wanted to, but the pattern doesn't call for it. So thank you so much for volunteering to make these. I know everyone at K-Risa really appreciates your generosity of your time, so thank you so much.